So basically, they're both touting about their past records, things that they've done in the past.
Yeah, kind of like the scene in Jaws almost, where they kind of go through. Or was that a little bit later?
No, they're doing it just right now.
Okay, I thought it was.
And I've been to Northern Ireland, Vietnam, Middle East, all of this sort of backstory.
I'm a badass and I'm 2 weeks from retirement.
Yeah. Well, seriously, but we find out here that the new guy was actually wound up on the force because, like, the FBI, I think it was, couldn't stand. No, NATO traded him to the FBI, and then the FBI brought him here because he's gonna be useless pretty soon. According to their. Sorry, I'm losing my mind a little bit.
He's getting old in his time. He can't keep it up.
Basically, is what it comes down to. It's like he's got some arthritis in his hand, so he can't really do anything about it. And so they're like, "Yeah, you go play with the cops. Get out of our hair. We don't need you."
Go play with the other toys.
Yeah,
well, he's basically coming out of a paramilitary background, and no one wants him anymore except. Well, the police could use somebody that can do what he can do.
Yeah.
Kingston, Iowa definitely needs this guy.
Well, since they got friggin' Spider-Man with gun arms running around, yeah, they do. Oh my God. If that happened in my place.
Was Iowa this bad?
I figured it would be.
It's not like this now. But man, in 2005,
it was the Wild West, especially in Kingston.
I had another note here. So basically, Sergeant Davis is taking this guy and showing him basically the beat, talking about the neighborhood, and it's like. So in 2005, apparently Kingston, Iowa's police department has a big gas budget to have a 70s V8 Chrysler engine.
Well, to be fair, at the time this was written, that wouldn't be too hard to actually swing. I mean, gas wasn't that ridiculous.
No, in 2005?
Well, now, but I mean, like when this was written, the gas prices
memory
weren't
serves, I think
that
later on there is actually a sign that shows a gas price because even back then we were like, oh yeah, it's going to go up, so I'll take a shot and see.
Oh, let's take it.
Yeah, there were.
Find it. One thing I'm also noticing is
that in this issue or one of the?
I think it's
issues?
near the end.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it real quick. Continue to vamp, please.
Okay.
One thing I've noticed is that you're actually spelling out the number of the pages at the bottom.
That was him.
Yeah, it's being weird. I don't know. There was no particular meaning there. I just was trying to do something kind of interesting. All right, never mind.
Yeah, Ninja High School.
Different issue.
Yeah, it must have been it.
So
I'll go look one more pass.
Okay.
We predicted laptops in one of our 3 issues.
It's
in here.
Laptops in here. Yep.
Oh.
Which is pretty awesome.
We
actually.
predicted terrorism.
we predicted mustaches.
Yes.
So the team comes to a stop, and this guy just jumps on the hood of the car. It's like, help me! And they're like, what the hell is going? And so it's just like this random encounter of this guy is like, my woman cut me. And
he's got a big old gash in his neck too.
Yeah, it's like
he's kind of playing with it. It's like, oh man, they definitely severed something, but
gonna heal if you keep picking at it.
And let other people do it for you.
Yeah, these dudes, man.
And we're starting to get into a lot of black area, and I need to ask.
And a lot more Zipatone.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to ask actually what. I don't know if it's the age of the comic or if just how it printed, but some of the black looks like it's been bleeding a bit.
It printed very dark. The reproduction and everything ended up about 20% darker than the Zipatone looked on the originals. This was my first time doing Zipatone for reproduction, and it's not quite as twitchy in the same way as Melissa can tell you. There's always a certain amount of trial and error with going from your digital file to how it's going to look printed, depending on what the printer is doing and the paper stock and all that kind of thing. Well, it's not quite to the same degree, but in the same way, depending on the paper quality and the printing, the fineness of a dot screen, depending on how it bleeds into the paper, the white area between the dots can fill in and everything gets a little darker. And so this was just a matter of of I was putting on gray tones that were meant to be maybe 60 to 70% dark, and some of them went 80 to 90% dark.
Oh, wait.
So some of the pages that are like, wow, Chris is really going noir here. Maybe about 20% more than was intended.
All right.
Gotcha.
So they're handling like this domestic dispute, and we see this guy standing on top of on top of a roof without a cape, so it's not Batman. Basically looking on.
Yeah, Eternity didn't
own the rights to
They were
Batman.
frowning on us using Batman at that time. We couldn't figure out why.
We come to one of my more favorite scenes coming up. So I don't know I don't know how you were doing like the Zipatone with ink, or if this is just smearing from the print. But you got a really dank, dirty looking apartment. I'm pretty sure you meant that.
Would you like to know the technique that produced that look?
Yes, please.
Oh, I know this technique.
India ink and an old toothbrush.
Whoa.
You mask off the areas that you don't want to have that. You get the brush wet with the India ink, and then you just spritz it onto the paper.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's what gives you that effect.
And if you do it in reverse and use white ink on black, you can do some incredible space effects.
Oh.
Honestly, you can do some beautiful stuff.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
So that's what that is.
I thought that was just really cool, actually. It worked very well to give this impression of the sort of, rundown area that you were looking at here.
One of the challenges I had through this whole book, and like I said, this was my first time out doing. I mean, I'd done some bits of comic art here and there, but this was my.
When was your first comic published?
When I was 10.
And what was it named?
Mr. Muscle.
It was about a
That
crusade.
again is another whole different panel.
We'll have you on the podcast.
But this is the first full length story I'm doing, so I didn't have a lot of experience with a lot of the various techniques, and between grimy hallways and just sequences taking place at night, I was really trying to figure out in a black and white book, where if you didn't put ink there, it was going to be as white as the paper was, how to create texture and how to make it dark without just everything's black. And so you're seeing me experiment with a lot of techniques that I hadn't mastered yet, with either that kind of spatter effect or some of the Zipatone, which again I found out can't go that dark with that fine a screen.
Yeah.
So one thing we get here, we have the new guy on the force that's never been a really police officer before. Just thinks it's fine to knock on somebody's door.
Yeah.
Kind of look intimidating
Yeah, I'm
without
a-
showing a badge. Hi, I'm a police officer. I'd
Yeah.
probably slam the door in their face too.
Yeah, but of course he's not a trained cop necessarily.
Well, true. Even
Yeah.
though you could gather that. Oh shit, the police.
Yeah, that's
Same
too.
time.
But
And he has no respect for the job he's doing. He thinks this is a joke.
way beneath him. Yeah, and
I've heard that.
Yeah. I mean, like they're actually quite lucky he didn't just kick down the door and start blasting people.
Oh,
But
Jesus Christ. So
Is he
we
in
find
that
out
book?
the assailant stabber.
some lady,
Assailing.
yeah, she seems to like to want to dissect people, as it turns out.
She's just
She wants to-
misunderstood.
Dissect.
So let me see if I can zoom in on this face. Look at that face. That's a wonderful
Yes.
face.
And I
love
like,
that
and I like to
actually.
point out, she's bigger than he is.
It's a Hallmark moment.
I don't remember how you described her in the script, but I remember having this image of she's supposed to be this grizzly bear of a woman.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I'm half expecting like a small alien head to come out of her mouth.
I gotta ask, what were you drawing upon when you came up with what were you drawing upon with this character?
With Wyatt?
Yeah, what were you drawing upon with this character?
Which, you mean the big guy
No,
with
Chris,
mustache?
what paper
Oh.
were you using to draw
Oh.
upon?
Oh!
What?
I thought it was a writing question.
No, that was a carefully
I-
structured joke I had prepared.
That'd be
Let's never do that again, please.
Versus
Thank
our
you.
paper.
Oh,
Okay.
come on.
let's
Okay.
let's never speak of this.
So
Yeah.
we have this confrontation, and
Yep.
we find. Oh, we find
Dude
out
is kinda
that-
knife-proof.
He's kind of a man of steel as well.
Or
Yes.
something like it. It's hard to tell precisely, but it looks, like he seems to be either invulnerable or possibly using a technique.
Or maybe he just went Tanuki.
That's
Did
a hell of a
he just turn
technique.
Tanuki?
Yeah, well, that's why That's why I say you
Well,
kind
I
of.
could answer that.
Well, like in Super Mario Brothers 3, where Mario is wearing the Tanuki suit, and then you
Oh, it
press
goes
down on
stone?
B and he turns into stone.
No, it's a force field.
Okay.
Such a
Yeah.
nerd.
Welcome to Convergence, everybody.
Convergence.
Ooh.
This is back in the 80s when our superheroes were simpler. Age and time.
Oh, yeah.
Force field. Cool.
Simpler. Okay, I'm going to pin that for now. And then I'll
What?
come back to it.
What?
Then I'll ask you
I'm going
again.
to stick a pin on that. Okay.
Yes.
Sure, do that.
Hang a
So-
ladder on it.
He'll forget.
So we have a domestic dispute basically handled. The ambulance is here. They're taking the guy that's been stabbed in the neck. So it seems like, yep, things are wrapping up. All right, we take.
Well,
care
they're
of this.
they're wrapping up, but not permanently, and they're actually quite perceptive to notice this because the people aren't pressing charges.
Yeah.
Because they all live together, and they essentially, you know, as he says here, they have lived together. They're all they've got.
Right, and this is not strange to Davis at all because this is his beat. He knows these people.
Yeah, exactly. Which
So-
I thought was out with another really nice touch, because ordinarily in a comic, especially in this era, you just have something wrap up extremely tightly, and with no indication that there would be any other issues. But here they're basically saying, yeah, this will probably happen again and again, and
Yeah.
we really can't do much about that. You just have to accept it. It's
We
gonna be part
respond
of their
to
lives.
it.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do to fix it.
Precisely, which I thought was, you know, once again, this very nice this piece of complexity that you guys put into the setting here.
Yes.
We thought so.
The way that it's written is, well, you got the new guy, and he's the in for the audience. He's why everything needs to be explained. Why basically we're being introduced to this world.
He's the Doctor Who companion.
Yeah.
But he's the one with the powers.
To be honest, yeah, he's
Well-
the reader's eye.
Well, and, but, and the way I look at this is, you know, you watch, there are like action cop movies, and then there's police procedurals.
Yeah.
And to me, this always had more of the sensibility of a police procedural, even though there's action in it and there's the science fiction element of there are people with superpowers. But, you know, this is dealing with, you know, the consequences of violence, the personal lives of some of the supporting characters in ways that in something that was primarily action adventure wouldn't.
Absolutely.
And I always thought that was cool. I always liked that about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you picking up on the thing with what, because, well, didn't try to hide it, but, I mean, that was, we got 3 issues and then it stopped. We thought we were going to have 8, but the first 3 issues actually tell one long storyline, kind of like a novel. But one thing we were trying to get across was that, yeah, Wyatt comes from the outside. He's very worldly. He's worked Black Ops and things. You know, he's seen all the worst of the world, but he's seen a whole lot of it. Where Davis, he served in the military, he has seen some areas, but he is most comfortable in the field in this area. This is where he grew up. So even though he has some experience and he's not a dumb man at all, he is most comfortable in this area. So you have 2 people who are just going like this, you know, Davis is trying to say, here, this is what the world's like, and Wyatt's going, I've seen some crazy stuff, but this is just bizarre going on here.
It's a little bit like macro versus micro.
In a way, yeah. It's almost like all the bad things in the world get boiled down here. The other thing is, I mean, just on my end, I have a tremendous amount of respect for police officers. I don't want to go too far with it, but we've only had 1 police officer killed in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in the last 34 years. That was right next door where I grew up. A man I knew my whole life killed a police officer. So this book actually does try to show some respect for that and how dangerous that job is, and just something as easy as it was a domestic dispute that night. That actual event there is based on something a police officer went through, but he doesn't have a force field. He had a bulletproof vest on, which saved his life. This woman stabbed him. He was trying to stop this. So it's like, yeah, that was a pretty harrowing event. I'm going to put him in something. Let's have something that actually happened. It's a tough job. It's an awfully tough job.
I mean, it's like the way that thus far, for the most part, is the way that this comic has been reading, could be a number of plots that you would be you wouldn't be unreasonable in finding in and maybe a movie in the 80s or 90s, or maybe in the late 90s to the early aughts of a TV series.
Yeah, actually, it's probably one of the nicest compliments I ever got, like, in a strange way, was Dave Olbrich, who was a publisher at Malibu. Malibu Graphics owned Eternity Comics, and they all had these different titles. It was one big company. And he had worked at Amazing Heroes and different companies. He knew his stuff. And we were talking when we had the hardest time getting an artist. It's hard to believe Chris is on it, but we had the hardest time getting an artist on this book. I think you originally turned me down, if I remember right. You did this coming out of high school, and I think I asked you before you graduated or something. I may be wrong.
I don't remember ever saying no to it.
Because I remember after all these troubles, I was driving up here one day. I was like, I got to get him to say yes this time. I got to get him to say yes. Like, I stopped at your house, and I was like, Chris, I really want you on this book. You went, yeah. Well, that was easy.
Maybe your earlier correspondence was going to the wrong person, and they were just very confused.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Chris Joneses around.
Yeah,
True.
I can't swing a dead cat without hitting a.
But
Chris.
one day before, and it was getting to the point where it's like, we can't find an artist in this book. They came close to not ever coming out. But Dave did say, he says, all the stuff I've ever seen, and he worked at a lot of companies. He goes, this is the closest I've seen to a really good TV pilot. This is a great pilot you've got here. And I was like, thank you. I was kind of going for that.
Would you like to
feel
option it?
Yeah.
He tried. It got around, but it never. Trust me, every time I go
But
to a
I've
Men
heard
in
that
Black
that's
movie.
easy.
Oh yeah, right. Every time I go to a Men in Black movie and I see that thing come up, I'm like, nothing against Lowell Cunningham, but come on. Did you see the Men in Black comic?
All right,
Yeah, it
so
was not
we have a
quite the
couple more
same.
dates here referenced.
Okay.
Does anybody know what happened in Lebanon in '91?
Wikipedia.
There were some bad things that happened.
Or
to characters.
Northern Ireland in '92?
Yeah, there were attacks at that point. We did come up with a back history.
Nice.
A back history of the future.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually remember. I mean, Steve wrote a Bible for this that
Oh, yeah.
had a history of these characters and the world, and I'm sure if the series had continued, some of that would have gotten dropped into scripts over time. But I mean, really, it was just making sure that he and I had a framework for what the history was, so that the specifics that we're getting in there hung together with a certain cohesiveness.
Yeah, it's very important to have that kind of thing when you're doing, like a long form sort of story. Like the comic that I'm doing with Oni Press, I've done the exact same thing. You have an entire Bible, you know what happened to all of your characters pretty much from the time that they were born until the time the story begins. You need to have that kind of thing to be cohesive so that the entire thing does, like you said, hang together. Because if you just kind of put things out randomly and you don't have them actually planned, people know.
As I recall, I actually think, you had a reason why there was a large city named Kingston in Iowa in 2005 that was not noticeably present in 1989.
Yeah, there was a lot of reasons. One of it was a university there had grown, which we kind of did happen in Cedar Rapids, where I'm from, exponentially, and that brought in a lot of jobs. So that's, and it's kind of, you're a few years off, but it is starting to happen down there between Cedar Rapids and a town called Iowa City. They're just growing to be one big metropolis.
Nice.
And then the thing was that where I grew up, it's not Chicago or anything like that, but I didn't grow up in the nicest part of town. But I didn't grow up in the worst part of town. That was across the river from us. But I did grow up in an ethnic neighborhood, and I grew up across the river from a slaughterhouse.
It's
and
always
things like
across
that.
the river
So
where the bad part of town
it is, isn't it? But in this case, it was. We were very glad about that.
No, I'm not just. I'm
But,
actually saying it is always across the river.
But in all
Yeah.
honesty, yeah, looking back, I kind of wish we hadn't said it in Iowa. Probably would have been better not to just even mention the town at all. Maybe, I don't know, but
It works
that's what we
out.
went for.
So back to Street Heroes.
Yeah, well, this is about
2005.
Street Heroes, but yeah.
That's all Street Heroes.
About this
information.
issue.
The
Yeah.
conversation goes a little bit more. Did it say his name is Wolverine? That's his last name.
Wolverstone.
Wolverstone.
Wolverstone. Sorry.
Yeah. There's a ton of Captain Blood references.
So he.
Yeah, that's the
I'm a
steering the
slight
con-
Raphael Sabatini fan. Major fan.
He's
Nice.
steering the conversation to basically talk about Dan's because he is a Dan, despite not being named Dan. And
I could change his name if you like.
Yeah, I think you want to.
Dan Wolverstone.
Doesn't it just seem weird?
If that doesn't sound like Leave It to Beaver, I don't.
he's basically bringing up concerns that he has, because it's like, well, essentially, if you have powers, well, you're going to be you're going to be working for the government for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I do like it was this is something that really intrigued me and made me want to continue reading and find out how many issues really got at least, is that he mentions, look, whether he's 10 or 70 in North America, Dan can use his abilities only in some governmental capacity. The fact that he mentions 10 makes me wonder if they do recruit children, which I had a feeling might be something that would come up a bit later.
X-Men.
The Jedi do recruit children.
Yeah.
The Jedi are insane, but I'm talking about like something that's actually could be more of a child soldier.
You're going a little darker than I want.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was like in the second episode we kind of got into it more where we saw this fellow. He wasn't 10. He was in his early 20s. He's just a blue collar worker going to work one day, and he never told anybody what he could do. And he was just working. Well, he sees this woman being assaulted, and he can't walk by, so he tries to stop it. Well, everything goes wrong. There were 3 men attacking her. One he kills completely by accident. It was kill or be killed. One he totally maims in a horrible way. He did that really well. And all of a sudden he becomes the center of a very major trial because, like, hold it, he was trying to save this woman's life, but he wasn't allowed to do that. What he did was against the law, and it does build up a whole public firestorm. People are talking about, well, hold it, he did a good thing, but it's against the law. What kind of laws do we have here? So that's what we're kind of referring to. I wasn't thinking about the X-Men. I was more like, no, really, if you've got these, you can't use them unless you follow these laws. But, you know, people call them gray areas. To me, that's not gray. He did the right thing.
Yeah.
He absolutely did the right thing. And we went after that in the next 2 issues.
Nice.
And in the midst of that conversation, they are being targeted.
Yes.
As we've seen this in the inside panel.
They could just really be paranoid, you never know. Hell no.
Except for the whole targeting. Yeah.
So the 70s V8 Chrysler takes a hit for the team, and
the warranty just went off.
Do you realize how much gas was in that paint to explode?
Yeah. To go out like that.
That's had a lot of gas. That had a big gas.
Yeah, and this one I think was this next panel here. I think was a little bit came out dark, but I
Just a little. Just to be clear, the whole previous sequence, those backgrounds were originally not black.
Really?
They were gray. So I was trying to do a night scene. I had I had characters who were mostly black with some edge lighting against a dark gray background. Okay. And then the background turned black.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. That when the book showed up, I was like, oh, my first comic. And I flipped into this thing, and by the time I got to that page, I just wanted to cry. And I don't know what Chris felt like. I was like, come on. And I talked to the publishers, like, yeah, they came out a little dark. You think, Dave?
You think?
Pete. It's only one of the pivotal moments of the comic, but hey, nobody can see it. Just use your mind.
So to be clear, what is happening in the panel that is so dark here?
No, I gathered what happened.
Okay.
But
No, just let him say.
let him get.
Let's talk.
There's
Damn.
mass murder going on in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
I wanted to say,
You might be
I
happy
did
you
get
can't
what
see it.
happened.
Okay,
so
good.
You might be happy you can't see
After a
what's going
couple of
on
looks,
there.
but yeah, I did.
But to be clear, you see in panel 2 that these orderlies with the ambulance are loading this person into the ambulance on the gurney, and they are all sliced in half, including several people standing around by basically laser fire from this firepower character. I mean, so it's about a half a dozen people all just cut in half.
Dang, I didn't know that's what happened. I thought he was just shot.
Maybe
Yikes.
the printer was offended.
I found this really neat. I found this really neat Zipatone screen. That was a gradient that went from darker to a little lighter to darker. So I used that across the whole panel so that you had the actual laser fire in white, but this sense of it being this light source, and the whole thing just turned black because it was too fine of a dot pattern.
That's still, that's actually a really good
it could have been. When is the reprint coming out?
It's been reprinted. The digital, I think, comes out later this year.
Didn't I actually replace that panel? Wasn't it like the one thing in the whole book we changed is I replaced that panel?
You
Nice.
did redraw that whole panel, yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
And it is on a reprint book. But yeah, it will be available on digital if you want
Well,
to buy
let
it.
us
totally
know.
gotta
and then
check it out,
When we
'cause-
update this show, we'll update it
Awesome.
with a link.
Anyway, but enough about that.
We don't do that for everybody. We don't just
Well,
give a link
appreciate
directly to the ebook for everybody.
Thank you.
So
But anyways,